The storm didn't just arrive, it assaulted the county. It started as a heavy gray ceiling that lowered itself over the mountains in the afternoon, and by sunset, it was a white wall of wind and ice that turned the world into a chaotic blur. The weatherman had called it a historic event, using words like bomb cyclone and life-threatening conditions, but listening to him talk about it on TV was different than watching it slam into your siding. By the time I woke up the next morning, the whole street was dead. The silence was the first thing I noticed. No hum of the refrigerator, no digital clock glowing on the nightstand, no street lights filtering through the curtains, just a heavy, suffocating quiet. Then, a familiar rumble started in the basement. My generator. It kicked on with a shudder that vibrated through the floorboards, a mechanical heartbeat bringing the house back to life. I had installed it 2 years ago after a bad ice storm, and while it had cost a fortune, hearing the furnace click on a moment later made every penny worth it. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out. The world had been erased. The street, the sidewalks, the neighbors' driveways, all gone, buried under 3 feet of drifting snow. The houses across the street were dark, huddled against the drifts like sleeping animals. No lights, no smoke from chimneys yet. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. I was standing in my warm kitchen, smelling the coffee brewing, while the rest of the neighborhood was waking up to freezing temperatures. It felt like cheating, like I was hoarding warmth while everyone else shivered. It was an irrational feeling. I couldn't power their houses, but it made me move quieter, like I was trying to hide my good fortune. I was stirring oatmeal, watching the steam rise, when I heard it.
A knock. It wasn't the frantic pounding of an emergency. It was a steady, heavy thud. Thud, thud, thud. I froze. Who would be out in this? The wind chill was 20 below zero. I walked to the front door, tightening my robe. I peered through the peephole. A man was standing there, huddled in a thick parka that looked expensive but not warm enough for this. Beside him, pressed against his legs like they were trying to merge with him, were 2 small shapes. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. The wind tried to rip it out of my hand instantly. Ideally, the storm door would have blocked it, but I hadn't latched it properly. Snow blasted into the entryway, stinging my face. "Hey!" the man shouted over the gale. "I am so sorry to bother you." He looked like a neighbor. That's the scary part in hindsight. He looked normal, clean-shaven, mid-30s, wearing a knit cap. He had that apologetic suburban dad smile plastered on his face, though his lips were blue. "I live down the street," he yelled, gesturing vaguely into the whiteout with a gloved hand. "Blue house on the corner? Our heat went out last night. The house is already down to 40 degrees. Pipes are gonna burst. I wouldn't ask for myself, but..." He looked down. The kids. A boy and a girl. The boy looked maybe 8, the girl 6. They were miserable. The boy was rubbing his arms furiously, his face buried in a scarf. The girl's nose was bright red, her eyes watery and wide. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at the ground, shivering so hard their whole bodies shook. "I saw your lights were on," the man continued. "I just thought, if we could just warm up for an hour until the road's clear, I can pay you for the trouble. I just need to get them warm." This was hands down the weirdest situation I'd ever been in. My brain screamed, stranger danger. I lived alone. I didn't know this man.
I didn't remember a blue house on the corner, though. In my defense, I kept to myself. But my eyes saw 2 freezing children who looked like they were about to cry. The social pressure to be a good neighbor is a powerful drug. It overrides survival instincts. It tells you not to be rude. It tells you to help. "Yeah," I said, stepping back before I could talk myself out of it. "Of course, come in. Don't worry about paying, just get them inside." They stepped into the hallway. The man ushered the kids in with a hand on each of their shoulders, a grip that looked a little too tight, a little too controlling now that I replay the memory. "Boots on the mat, please," I said, closing the door and locking it against the wind. The silence of the house returned instantly. The kids obeyed instantly. They didn't kick them off or complain about knots. They bent down in unison, unlaced them with frozen fingers, and lined them up perfectly side by side. It was weirdly disciplined.
Too disciplined for kids who were supposedly freezing and panicked. "I'm Mark," the man said, extending a cold hand. "This is Lucas and Maya." The kids didn't say hi. They just stood there, shivering in their damp socks, waiting for instructions. They looked at Mark, then at the floor. "I'm Sarah," I said. "Go sit on the couch. I'll get some blankets and hot chocolate." Mark smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were scanning the hallway, the living room, the stairs. "Thank you, Sarah," he said. "You're a lifesaver." "Really?" I went to the kitchen to boil water, and for a second, looking at the steam rising from the kettle, I felt good. I was helping. I was the hero with the generator. I didn't know yet that I had just invited a monster into my living room. I brought the hot chocolate out on a tray, 3 mugs with marshmallows, because I wanted to be comforting. The kids were sitting on the couch, side by side, stiff as boards. They hadn't moved a muscle since I left the room. They weren't looking around at my books or my TV. They were staring straight ahead. Mark was standing by the fireplace, which wasn't on, looking at the photos on my mantle. He picked one up, a picture of me and my sister. "Here you go," I said, setting the tray on the coffee table. The kids didn't reach for the mugs. They looked at Mark. He turned around, replacing the photo. "Go ahead, guys. Say thank you to Sarah." "Thank you," they murmured in unison. Their voices were tiny, raspy. Then and only then did they take the cups. They held them with both hands, using the heat to thaw their fingers. I turned on the TV to a cartoon channel. The volume was low. The kids stared at the screen, but they didn't seem to be watching it. They looked like they were waiting for permission to enjoy it. "So," Mark said, taking a sip of his cocoa. He was standing too close to me. Not aggressively close, just inside my bubble. "You live here alone?" The question was casual. Too casual. It was the kind of question a neighbor asks, but the timing felt wrong. I hesitated. My instincts flared again. "Yeah," I said. "Just me." He nodded, looking around the room again. "Nice place. Secure. You have a generator, obviously. Smart." "Yeah, my dad insisted on it," I lied. I didn't have a dad involved. He died 10 years ago, but I wanted to imply there was a man somewhere in the picture, a protector. "He comes by to check on it." "Smart man," Mark said. We sat there for hours. The storm outside worsened, the wind howling against the siding like it wanted to tear the house down. The updates on my phone said the power outage was widespread and crews wouldn't be out until the wind died down, 24 hours minimum. I tried to make small talk. The silence was heavy, suffocating. "So, what do you do, Mark?" "Sales," he said. "Regional, lots of travel." "And you guys moved in recently. I don't remember seeing the blue house occupied." "Couple months ago," he said. "Kept to ourselves mostly, busy with the move." Every answer was like that. Vague, generic, nothing I could verify. No specific company name, no mention of a wife or a mom. And the kids, they were ghosts. They didn't fight over the remote. They didn't ask for snacks. They didn't ask to use the bathroom. Lucas, the older one, kept rubbing his wrist like it hurt. Maya just stared at her knees, rocking slightly. I tried to engage them. "Do you guys go to the elementary school down the road?" Lucas looked at Mark. Mark nodded slightly. "Yeah," Lucas said. "Do you like it?" "It's okay." Conversation dead. By 4 p.m., the light outside was fading into a bruised purple-gray. It was clear they weren't going anywhere. The street was buried under 4 feet of drifts. "You guys should probably stay," I said, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. I wanted them gone. My skin was crawling. I felt like an intruder in my own home. "The roads are impossible. Even if you walked, it's too dangerous." Mark nodded quickly. "That would be amazing. Thank you. We can sleep anywhere. Floor is fine. Just happy to be warm." "I have a guest room," I said. "You can take that. The kids can take the couch. It pulls out into a bed." "Perfect," he said. "You're too kind, Sarah. Not everyone would do this." He said that line a few times. Not everyone would do this. It started to sound less like a compliment and more like an observation of my vulnerability. I set up the beds. I gave them extra pillows. I made grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. The kids ate them ravenously, like they hadn't eaten in days, but they were careful not to drop a single crumb.
I went to my own room around 9 p.m. I told them I was exhausted, which was true,
but it was a mental exhaustion. Being around Mark felt like walking on ice. One wrong step, and you go under. I locked my bedroom door. I'd never done that in my own house before. I checked it twice. I lay in bed, listening. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the generator and the wind. I kept thinking about the kids. Why were they so quiet? Why didn't they look at me? Why did Lucas flinch when Mark handed him a napkin? I grabbed my phone to text my sister. Weird situation, neighbor staying over, bad vibes. I hit send. Message send failure. I looked at the bars. No service. The tower must be down, or the storm was blocking the signal. I was alone. I watched Mark move around my living room. He walked with a strange confidence, touching things, my books, a vase, the remote control. It was like he was shopping. "You have a lot of books," he said. "I read a lot," I said. "Must get lonely," he said. "Reading all the time." "I like it," I said, my voice sharp. He smiled that empty smile again. "I'm just saying, it's good to have company sometimes." I didn't answer. I just wished the storm would end. I wished the snow would stop falling so I could kick them out. But the snow kept falling. I woke up at 1 a.m. It wasn't a noise that woke me. It was the feeling of not being alone, the primitive part of my brainstem lighting up. But then I heard it, the floorboard in the hallway, the one that creaks if you step right in the center. Creak, then silence, then another step. Someone was standing outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stared at the door handle, visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. The doorknob turned.
Slowly, painfully slowly, the brass mechanism clicked. I saw the lock turn. Wait, I hadn't locked it. I could have sworn I locked it. I checked it twice. Unless it could be opened from the outside. Or unless I had turned it the wrong way in my panic. The door drifted open. A silhouette stood in the frame, backlit by the faint light from the kitchen nightlight down the hall. It was Mark. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching me in the dark. He was completely still. "Mark," I whispered. My voice shook so bad it sounded like gravel. He didn't move. "Are you okay?" I asked louder, sitting up, pulling the duvet to my chin. He blinked, like he was waking up from a trance. "Oh," he said. His voice was flat, monotone. "Sorry, Sarah. Didn't mean to wake you." He took a step into the room. He was wearing the same clothes he had on earlier. He hadn't changed. "I was hungry," he said. "I was going to make a sandwich. I wanted to ask if that was okay. I didn't want to be rude and just take food. Who walks into a stranger's bedroom at 1 a.m. to ask for a sandwich? Who opens a closed door for that? It's fine," I said, my voice high and tight. "Help yourself. Just close the door, please." He stood there for another 5 seconds, just long enough to make it unbearable, just long enough to let me know that he could be in here if he wanted to be. "Right," he said. "Thanks." He backed out and closed the door. I didn't hear footsteps walking away. I didn't hear the fridge open. I didn't hear the clatter of a plate. I just heard silence. He was standing in the hall. I knew it. I sat up, trembling. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand again. Still no service. Emergency calls only. I dialed 911. It rang, and rang, and rang. All circuits are busy. Please try your call again later. The storm.
The lines were overloaded. I was trapped. I turned on the lamp. I didn't want to be in the dark anymore. I grabbed a pair of scissors from my nightstand drawer, the ones I used for cutting tags off clothes. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was metal. I sat there for an hour, staring at the door. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself he was just socially awkward. I told myself he was a dad trying to be polite. But my gut knew better. My gut was screaming at me to run. But run where? Into a blizzard? Around 2:30 a.m., exhaustion won.
I dozed off, sitting upright against the headboard, the scissors clutched in my hand. I laid there in the dark after he left, listening to the silence. I imagined him in the kitchen. I imagined him opening the drawers. I imagined him picking up the knife block. Stop it, I told myself. He's just a neighbor. He's just a guy. But my body didn't believe me. My heart was still racing. My hands were shaking. I thought about the scissors in the drawer. I slowly, quietly opened the drawer. It slid open with a soft shh sound. I reached in and felt the cold metal. I gripped them tight. If he came back, I would be ready. I practiced the motion in the dark, stabbing, slashing. It felt ridiculous. It felt necessary. I woke up to darkness. The lamp was off. Someone had turned it off, and there was a hand over my mouth, a heavy, leather-gloved hand smelling of wet wool and tobacco. I tried to scream, but the sound was smothered instantly. A figure was leaning over me, dressed in black, a ski mask over the face. Shh, a voice whispered. It was Mark. Even with the whisper, I knew it. Don't make this hard, he hissed. Don't scream, and I won't hurt you. I panicked. I thrashed, kicking my legs under the covers. I slashed out with the scissors. They caught on his jacket, tearing the fabric but not hitting skin.
He swore and grabbed my wrist, twisting it until I dropped them. You bitch! He slammed his weight down on me, penning my legs. He moved his hand from my mouth to my throat. He squeezed. I clawed at his mask, scratching at the eye holes. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision. I said, "Be quiet," he roared. I was losing. He was too strong. Then, from the hallway, a small voice cut through the noise of the struggle. "Stop it!" Mark froze. His grip loosened just a fraction. "Stop hurting her!" It was Lucas. Mark turned his head, still pinning me. "Go back to sleep, Lucas, now." "No," the boy said. His voice was trembling, but loud, defiant. "We called them." Mark went still. "What?" "We used the phone." Maya's voice piped up, small and terrified, from behind her brother. "The one on the wall, like you said not to." "We called 911, Lucas said. "They answered. They're coming." Mark looked at me, then at the door. He didn't check to see if they were lying. He believed them. He knew the landline worked because the generator powered it. He had forgotten to check it. He jumped off me. He didn't say a word. He didn't look back. He bolted. I heard him run down the hallway, heavy boots thudding on the hardwood. I heard the front door slam open and the howl of the wind rushing into the house. I lay on the bed, gasping, rubbing my throat. Then I scrambled up and ran to the hallway. Lucas and Maya were standing by the kitchen phone, the old beige landline on the wall. The receiver was dangling by its cord, swaying gently. They were holding hands, shaking violently. I fell to my knees and hugged them both. "You did it," I sobbed. "You guys did it." We sat there in a pile on the floor, shivering in the cold draft from the open front door, until we saw the blue lights flashing through the living room window.
The police arrived in minutes. The storm slowed them down, but they came. They found Mark trying to start his car down the street. He had parked it 2 blocks away, but the plow drift had buried it. He was trying to dig it out with his bare hands. They tackled him into the powder. An officer came inside to check on us. He looked at the kids, then at me. "Are you Mom?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm the neighbor." He said he was the neighbor. The officer looked confused. He crouched down to Lucas. "Son, is that your dad?" Lucas shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "Who is he?" "I don't know," Lucas said. "He took us." The room went dead silent. The wind outside seemed to stop. "He took you?" the officer asked gently. "From where?" "From our house," Lucas said. "Yesterday. He came in the back door. He had a knife. He tied up Mommy and Daddy in the basement." I felt the blood drain from my face. The room spun. They weren't his kids. He wasn't a neighbor with a heating problem. He was a predator who had abducted 2 children, got caught in a blizzard, and used my house, my generator, my warmth, my gullibility as a hotel to wait out the storm. The officer stood up, his face pale. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, I need a welfare check. He looked at Lucas. "What's your address, buddy?" Lucas recited it. It was 3 towns over. The aftermath was a blur. More cops, ambulances, social workers. They took the kids to the hospital to be checked out. Before they left, Lucas looked at me. "Thanks for the hot chocolate," he said. I broke down. I sat on my front steps in the snow and cried until I couldn't breathe. They found the parents later. They were alive, barely.
hypothermic and dehydrated in their basement, tied to a radiator, but alive. Mark, his real name was something else, a guy with a rap sheet a mile long for burglary and assault, is in prison for life.
He had been casing neighborhoods for weeks, looking for opportunities. The storm gave him cover. I still live in the house, but I don't have a guest room anymore. I turned it into an office with a lock on the door, and I don't answer the door when it snows. I sit in the dark, and I listen to the generator hum, and I think about how close I came to never waking up, and I think about two little kids, terrified and freezing, who were brave enough to pick up a phone when a monster wasn't looking. I think about the boots, lined up perfectly on the mat. Discipline born of fear. I never leave my boots by the door anymore. I keep them right next to my bed, just in case I need to run. Sometimes when the wind howls against the windows, I wake up and I swear I can hear footsteps in the hall. I lie there and I listen. I wait for the door handle to turn, but it never does, because I bought a new lock, a heavy one, and I got a dog, a big German shepherd who sleeps by the door. If Mark ever comes back, or anyone like him, they won't get past the mat. They won't even get to take their boots off. And the generator? I still have it. But now, when it kicks on in the silence of a storm, I don't feel guilty. I feel grateful. Because it kept the phone line alive. And that hum, that low, steady hum, it reminds me that even in the darkest storms, there is still power. There is still a way out. You just have to be brave enough to find it.